three conditions. Number one, his own forces have to be ready. Will he have enough combat power, armored brigades with tanks, mechanized infantry, armored engineers, air defense, and artillery that can move along with these formations that could penetrate in 2 or 3 different places these long, dense Russian linear defenses? You know, the Russians are spread out over 800-900 miles. Ukrainians don't need, and they're not going to attack along a broad front. I think they're going to focus overwhelming combat power on 2 or 3 places to achieve a penetration that would go all the way to Azov Sea coast to cut the land bridge to begin the isolation of Crimea, and then bringing up HIMARS and other long-range systems that can begin to make the Crimean Peninsula untenable for the Russian Navy, Air Force, all those bases, Lance, that you mentioned earlier. So the first condition, does he have enough combat power to do that? Have they trained and practiced enough? To include with the Leopards and the Martyrs and the Bradleys and Challengers and French AMX-10 and all the other systems that have been coming in. The second condition, of course, are the Russian forces. Have they been degraded enough so that at least at the places where the Ukrainians will want to attack, the defenses have been degraded? That's why we're seeing fuel storage sites on fire, ammunition sites getting blown up, headquarters being blown up. I think there's an awful lot of partisan activity going on in the Russian rear area that's creating some of the chaos back there. And then, of course, you know, every Russian private knows there's an attack coming, but they don't know where, when, or how. Just like the Germans knew that the Allies were coming in the summer of 1944, but they didn't know when, where, or how. And so I think the Ukrainian General Staff is still working on deception about how they're going to do that. The third condition is the ground. Is it dry enough to sustain the movement and the churning of hundreds of heavy tracked armored vehicles? Because obviously you don't want to get stuck in the mud when you're trying to launch an attack and bypass bunkers and get through obstacles.
That's never happened in Ukraine before.
So that's why I think that third condition is the ground ready. And you're right. And particularly, I had a Ukrainian officer, a friend of mine, who says that the terrain in that part, in that southeastern part of Ukraine, is especially nasty when it gets wet, just because of the centuries, the millennia of how water flows. And so I think those are the 3 conditions. When they're met, I think President General Zaluzhny turns to President Zelensky and says, "We're ready to go."